Hey everyone, Josh here for another vlog. It has been a long time, and we're going to talk about that for just a second, but hope you're doing well. It is Friday, October the 3rd. Oh my God, it's already October. And I wanted to get back into doing this weekly vlog. As some of you know, whether you've been following me on YouTube or listening to the podcast, I've basically for the last 7-ish years gone back and forth between vlogging and hosting a podcast. So I've been the host of the Solopreneur Grind podcast where I interview solopreneurs, and I've done that for years and years on and off. I've interviewed, 135, I think, solopreneurs at this point. You can check that out on the podcast as well. But there's also been times where I took a break from interviewing and just recorded these vlogs, like solo episodes, just sharing my journey, Canadian tech founder, Canadian lawyer. And I'll talk a little bit about why I've done that, but I'm back into a just vlogging, like a solo podcast stage right now. If you're watching on YouTube, it's a vlog. If you're listening on the podcast, then heck, it's a podcast. So anyways, I'll explain a little bit why, and I'll explain about what I'm going to get back into here. And I'm going to be doing this every week. And it really came down to a couple things. Number one is I just got too busy and didn't have the time to dedicate to the podcast. And this is usually what happens where I don't earn any money from the Solopreneur Grind podcast, right? I started it because I wanted to get into podcasting and I love the idea of interviewing other solopreneurs. And I always enjoyed it. But the reality was it was always the third thing on my list, right? Since 2017, I've been a practicing lawyer here in Canada. And then since around 2020 as well, I've been a tech co-founder at our company called Vista. And those are how I make my money and how I pay my bills. And then the Solopreneur Grind podcast has always been the third wheel, so to speak. And so I've had phases where I've had time to dedicate to it, and I've had phases where I just haven't. One thing I've learned of many over the last 8 years is that focus is so key as an entrepreneur. And so some might even argue that focusing on 2 businesses is a bad idea. And so especially having a third, I think is equally not a great idea. So I've kind of parked that podcast for now. The episodes are still up. I think they're great. Go and listen to them if you want. But I think for the foreseeable future, I'm going to be focusing on building Vista, our legal tech startup, and continuing to practice as well as a lawyer. And those are going to be my only 2 focuses. And what this is going to be is a way that I create content, share my thoughts, share my journey, and building my brand, right? For the last 7-8 years, I've been creating content to build my personal brand. And so what makes more sense for me to do now is a vlog or a solo podcast like this. So what you can expect is every week a vlog. If you want to watch it, check me out on YouTube. I mean, you're not missing much, right? There's no like fancy, crazy visuals and editing. I'm going to make sure it's good enough quality, but if you want to actually see my lovely face, then watch it on YouTube. If you just like to hear this beautiful, lovely voice in your ears and that's it, listen during a commute or whatever it might be, by all means, stick to the podcast. That's awesome. Either way, I appreciate it. If you tune in every week, make sure you're subscribed, whether it's the YouTube channel or the podcast, so that you're actually getting this every week. And if you're not already, make sure you're on my Substack. The link will be in the description, because I'll actually send you an email every week when this goes out, as well as other emails, because I post on Substack a couple times a week. So that's what you can expect. And what I want to do is just share what my last week has been like in business. So building our legal tech company, Vista, practicing as now a family lawyer, and hopefully it'll be interesting and I'll be sharing like lessons and takeaways, books I'm reading, right? Because as you know, I'm always reading. So I'll have a quick segment at the end about what I'm reading. And hopefully you'll find it interesting and hopefully you'll learn, just like I am. So what I wanted to talk about today is I just spent the first 4 minutes kind of giving you an update. So I won't drag these out too long, probably anywhere from like 10 to 20 minutes is what I'm aiming for. And what I wanted to talk about is probably the biggest change since my last vlog is that I'm now practicing family law. So for the first 7 years of my career, I was practicing immigration law. And at the beginning of this year, I switched over to family law. And a lot of lawyers and even non-lawyers have been asking me like, hey, why did you make that switch? And maybe more importantly, how did you make that switch? Because apparently there's a lot of you out there who are maybe doing something that you don't love and you're thinking about making a similar switch, but it's confusing, it's difficult, it's stressful. How am I going to pull it off? And so a lot of people have kind of asked about that. So I'll share a little bit about that in this episode. And probably in future episodes, I'll do more of a broad, hey, what was my, what are the keys that I got up to in Vista that week? What are the keys that I got to practicing that week? And then what books am I reading and stuff like that. But it really happened mostly out of boredom, to be honest. At this point, or I should say, getting into the end of 2024, I'd been practicing immigration for 7 years, and a lot was changing in that industry. So number one, I got bored of doing the work because even though we've automated a lot of it at Visto, it's very, I did mostly application, like economic application work, and it quite frankly just got kind of boring. Part of immigration is you're filling out forms, you're gathering documents, you're submitting it to the government, you're crossing your fingers. And after 7 years of it, I just kind of got bored. I just wasn't excited to get up in the morning and do it. And I always keep that Steve Jobs quote in mind, which I'm going to paraphrase here is, if you get up too many mornings in a row not excited to go to work, change what you're working on. And I've always kept that in mind. And that's what happened. And then secondly, which kind of goes hand in hand with the first one, is the government kind of just screwed up immigration in Canada. And I'm not going to go deep down that rabbit hole or why this isn't supposed to be political, but the government basically kind of screwed up immigration in Canada, and it became a lot harder to practice. So a lot more stuff was being refused. There were all these new changes and this and that and the other. And it got unnecessarily difficult and frustrating because even if you did really good work, you might get a refusal for not a good reason, which is really frustrating, especially for your clients. So those two things, just kind of getting bored of it and the industry changing so much in my opinion, not a good way, I decided to make a change. And the first thing I did when I made that decision was, okay, well, what do I want to do next? And the first thing I did, which I think is the smart thing to do, besides going out and talking to people, is thinking about what do I want to do? What was it that got me into this area to begin with? So I was like, okay, I want to continue practicing law. Why did I, at the outset, want to become a lawyer? What is it that I love about the law? And what I realized after doing and this wasn't like a 5-minute exercise. This was like me thinking about it for days and days and maybe even weeks and weeks and saying, you know what? The reason I wanted to become a lawyer forever, because I've always wanted to, is I love arguing. I love litigation. I was doing mostly non-litigation work as an immigration lawyer. And I missed the advocacy part, the, oral and written advocacy that is part of being a lawyer, coming up with arguments, writing good arguments, saying good arguments to the judge, trying to get them to rule in your favor, in your client's favor and stuff like that. So with that in mind, I was like, okay, I know I want to go start doing some more litigation work. What type of litigation might I want to do? And I put together a list. Corporate litigation, commercial litigation, immigration litigation, family litigation. And then I just started talking to people. I messaged all the lawyers who I knew or sent them emails or reached out to people on LinkedIn, was like, hey, can I just talk to you for 20, 30 minutes? I'm thinking about getting into this area law, that area law, and want your input. And after talking to a bunch of people, I narrowed it down to family law. I don't know what it was. I know there was a few reasons why it kind of appealed to me. But after I had enough conversations too, my gut was kind of pushing me towards family law. And that's, I think, something that people don't maybe appreciate or rely on as much is go out and gather as much information as possible and then go with your gut. Even if you can't fully explain it. I could explain it. I had a personal connection. My parents separated when I was 2014. I was lucky because it was a quote unquote, like it was a really amicable separation and divorce. I was super lucky, but there's a personal connection there. And the area of law and the type, the way the law works for it sounded interesting to me, and the type of litigation sounded interesting to me. So I just said, screw it. Why don't I try it? You won't actually know until you try it. And I got some good advice on the quickest way to get some files and jump in. And so I did. And after, now it's been like 8 months, more than 8 months. And I'm really enjoying it. And it's going pretty well. And I think I'm doing some good work. I'd say the first 6 months were difficult, like anything new, right? You have to play catch up. You have to do a lot of learning. I dove into some books. I, watched some YouTube videos. I got a good mentor. I actually have multiple mentors. and it's been going well, and I'm happy with the decision. So that's kind of the why of why I did it. I've been asked a decent amount about how I did it, and I would say the biggest contributors to how I was able to do it relatively successfully. The story's still being written, and I'll make sure to share updates along the way, obviously. But number one, absolutely, is mentors. So I have multiple mentors now, and you wouldn't believe how many family lawyers I spoke to, some of whom I'd never chatted before, some of whom came from warm introductions or family friends or whatever. And almost every single one of them at the end of the call said, reach out anytime if you have any questions, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I always make sure not to bug people, but you wouldn't imagine, and you probably don't appreciate how many people, if you approach them friendly, have a nice short conversation, respect their time, ask them good questions, how many of them are willing to help, pay it forward. They probably have had or continue to have mentorship as well. And so don't forget that. Mentorship, number one. Number two is just kind of like diving into the content. So I picked up the bar materials on family law. I bought a couple books on family law, not the tombs. And I'll show this to you because a friend gave me this because now it's outdated. He has the 2024 volume. So he gave me his 2023 volume. And this is why you want to watch this show on YouTube, because you're seeing the visual here. Ontario Family Law Practice. Now, keep in mind, this is volume one, which means there's a second volume. And look at the size of this thing, right? So if you've been thinking about getting into law and are not sure, just make sure you like reading, because this is volume one from the 2023 practice direction. And this has been super helpful. Shout out to Nick. Thank you for it. Because every year, I guess most of the lawyers will get the new version. And so he passed along his old version to me. So anyways, I didn't start by reading this, right? Because this is just insane and also boring. What I did was I bought a book or two written by, like, a more practical guide written by family lawyers and one by a family judge. So I read a book from a family law judge. I read a book from a family law lawyer that were more easy to just kind of sit down and read as a book, and kind of dove in. So that'd be number two, books. So number one, mentors. Number two, books. And then number three is I've been using AI like crazy, especially on the research and writing side. So what I did was, and I have a few Substack posts about this. I think I even have a guide. I'll put a link to it in the description, where I posted a guide with screenshots on how I built a custom notebook LM for family law. So basically what I did was I took all the key statutes and regulations and rules and laws for family law, and I put them into a Google Notebook LM, and now I can ask it questions, and the AI will give me answers only based on those resources that I've added in. If you do a lot of research in any, doesn't matter if you're a lawyer or something else, oh my God, you can build your own database. You're basically building your own database and then using AI to search it. It is so helpful. So I highly recommend that. Again, I'll put a link to it in the description, whether you're watching on YouTube or on your favorite podcast platform. So check that out if you want the guide to using Notebook LM, or at least how I've been using it. So those are probably the big three: mentors, books, and AI and technology. The other update, the quick update I'll mention for Vista, is we actually launched a school community for legal professionals. So if you're a legal professional and you just want to learn more about how you can, use AI, whether it be research, writing, doing legal work, or building your personal brand. So creating more content, repurposing content, that kind of stuff. Definitely check that out too. I'm going to put a link to the school community in the description. Now, keep in mind, this is only for legal professionals. So if you're not a legal professional, lawyer, paralegal, immigration consultant, stuff like that, I'm going to refuse you. I'm sorry. It might be helpful for you, and I apologize, but we're just keeping it really niche and focused for the time being. And maybe I'll talk about why in the next episode. So that's probably where I'll end it here. Oh, let me talk about books really quickly. Let me take a quick segue sip, as I like to call it. And so what I'm reading right now is Crushing It. Now, if you've been listening to me or reading my stuff for a while, you know that I love Crushing It. I like Gary Vee. I think he's amazing. I think he puts out great content. I don't think you need to overconsume it. because he says a lot of the same stuff over and over again. But I think there's a lesson to take there, which is you don't need to read so much stuff. You're actually better to consume and remind yourself and reconsume the most important stuff over and over again. And so I think his book, Crushing It, is so good if you want to build a personal brand that I read it basically every year. And getting back into reprioritizing creating content in my personal brand, I was like, okay, it's time for me to do my yearly reread. So I'm about 80% through rereading Crushing It, which, like I said, if you're trying to build your personal brand, create more content, get some motivation about that, go read that book 5 times. It's really good. Next up on my list, because probably by the next time I post a week from now, I'll be done that book and on to the next one. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a Robert Greene kick. So for those who don't know, Robert Greene is 48 Laws of Power, 33 Laws of War. He's got a whole bunch of these other books that are really popular. So I just bought two books. I've not read entirely, but I've skimmed 48 Laws of Power a couple years ago. I might actually reread it because I'm going to go on this Robert Greene kick. But what I bought recently was number 1, I think it's called Mastery. I think that's just the name of the book. I don't remember what the subheading is. And then the other one that I bought is the 33 Laws of Rules of War. 33 Laws of, hold on, let me double check. War, I think it's War. 33 Strategies of War. That's what I bought. So I'm going to start that next. And then I'm going to read that next. I'm going to do the 33, or I might read Mastery first. I don't know. I'm going to read them both. I'm going to either read Mastery, then 33 Strategies of War, or vice versa. So that's what you can expect me to talk about. Because as I finish these books, I'll give you my thoughts and recommendations and key takeaways. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it up because it's been over 15 minutes already. But hopefully you found that interesting in terms of quick update, why I am where I am, what you can expect for these vlogs and solo podcasts moving forward. And if you're interested in following along on the journey, make sure you're subscribed so that you get the future updates. And make sure if you want to know exactly when each episode goes live every week, make sure you're on my Substack. And I'll put a link to that in the description. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. And I will see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.